I hope you guys are enjoying your new 7700X because Intel's going to release this new 13700K. Let's see if this new CPU is going to be the new king of the mid-range. It has only been more than 2 weeks since AMD launched Ryzen 7000, but Intel is now back in full force with their Raptor Lake or 13th Gen CPUs. I still remember when 12th Gen came out last year, and we're already talking about the new lineup from Intel. How time flies. Anyway, this 13700K comes with 8 P cores or performance cores and 8 E cores or efficiency cores. This gives you a total of 24 threads on this new CPU. But what's interesting is, out of the box, you're going to get a full turbo boost on the P cores as well as the E cores. That's right, 5.2 GHz on the P cores and 4.2 GHz on the E cores, even on idle. No tweaking and no overclocking are needed to get such speeds. What is this new design from Intel? And similar to the 12th Gen CPUs, the 13th Gen lineup supports DDR5 as well as PCIe 5, uses the LGA 1700 socket, and is compatible with both the Z690 chipsets as well as the new Z790 chipsets. Bear these numbers in mind. We're going to pit this CPU against AMD's mid-range king, the 7700X, as well as the fastest gaming CPU, the 5800X 3D. For setups, I'm going to use the new ASUS Z790-F for the 13700K, as well as the ASUS X670E-F for the 7700X. Both of these setups will share the new G.Skill Trident Z 6000MHz DDR5 RAM. For the 5800X 3D, you will go inside the ASUS ProArt with DDR4 RAM. I know the 7700X as well as the 13700K come with iGPU, but of course, we're not here to test the integrated graphics on both platforms, so we decided to use an RTX 3080 Ti to run the tests. Benchmark time! Our first game, Counter-Strike. I am surprised. I thought that with the high clock speeds, the Intel CPU will win this contest once again. However, it's 3% slower than the 7700X, though it does win the 1500X 3D. Second game, AC Valhalla. The 3 CPUs are on par with each other, with only a slight difference in FPS. If you want to be exact, the 13700K loses to both AMD CPUs, with 1% lows showing no difference in 1080p and 1440p. Game number 3, Watch Dogs Legion. Again, there's no distinct gap between the 3 CPUs. The 1500X 3D shows a slight 3% lead at 1080p and is on par with the 7700X on 1440p. Next game, Far Cry 6. We finally see a lead from the 13700K. It is 15% faster than both Ryzen's on 1080p. The 13700K still wins team rate even if you turn on DXR reflections and lighting. Yes! As we round it out with Cyberpunk 2077, we are back at square one. Again, the gap between the 3 CPUs are small, but the 13700K lags behind both team rate CPUs. However, you still get pretty high FPS on Cyberpunk even if you turn on ray tracing. And next is where the 13700K shows its true power in productivity. The 13700K scores a whopping almost 30,000 points on the Cinebench R23 multi-core benchmark. That's 50% faster than the 7700X. It also shows its power in the single core test, having a 9% lead over the 7700X. On V-Ray, the additional cores on the 13700K once more gives it an advantage. It is 44% faster than the 7700X and 87% faster than the 1500X 3D. And on Blender, the 13700K also takes a massive lead over both Ryzen CPUs. It is almost 50% faster than the 7700X and 2 times faster than the 1500X 3D. The 13700K still manages to keep a relatively good temperature even while on load. Intel seems to like to keep its 13th Gen CPUs beneath a certain thermal threshold. Okay, all of these results are really surprising. I knew the 13700K would be powerful, but not this powerful. Sure, it does have a small lead in some games compared to both Ryzen CPUs, but in productivity, wow, it is just simply amazing. But all of this comes with a price. The 13700K may not be a very hot CPU, but it does consume more power than the 7700X as well as the 1500X 3D. On our heavy Cinebench loads, the 13700K consumes an excess of 200 watts and peaks at almost 210 watts. Do give your PC a much bigger power headroom if you want to get this CPU or even a 3900K paired with a next-gen GPU. Well, on a positive note, things look a lot better on the Windows task scheduler. Unlike the previous generation, I see a more well-defined per core usage. The 13700K maximizes all peak cores with 5.3 GHz on our heavy loads. It even manages to max turbo 2 peak cores to 5.4 GHz during our Cinebench runs. All cores are fully utilized to give it a much better performance. However, I still do not know why Intel chooses to turbo boost all cores even while on idle. Perhaps Team Blue wants to make it easy for anyone to pick up this new CPU, as you do not need any form of tweaking or overclocking to get the best performance out of this 13th gen CPU. So based on what you and I have seen so far, the 13700K does make a good CPU to consider buying. He once again takes this productivity crown. The mega scores that you see on Cinebench, V-Ray and Blender gives the 7700X a run for its money. The 13700K also performs really well in single core tests, but somehow this does not translate over to gaming. I expected the CPU to win games such as CSGO, but it still loses to both Ryzen CPUs. Other games such as AC Valhalla are more GPU bound, so that's why the gap between the three CPUs are not very great. But nonetheless, you still get very high frames on the 1080p as well as 4040p gaming for the 13700K. Sure, the 13700K loses out to both Ryzen CPUs on some games, but what's a few FPS when getting more than 100 FPS on most games? By the way, if you're getting really awesome value so far, make sure to smash the like button. Next, you can reduce your Z690 as well as B680 motherboards, so you can use the money saved from these motherboards and buy something better like a high-end graphic card. Third point, this is a bit on the grey side. I forgot to mention, 13th gen supports both DDR5 as well as DDR4 RAM. Yes, you can save money by reusing your DDR4 RAM, but if you come from 12th gen and already own DDR5, that's not a problem. Likewise, if you own 10 or 11th gen and want to upgrade, it should also not be a problem because DDR5 RAM prices are dropping. Providing both D5 and D4 on the same platform may be convenient for customers, but as I mentioned in the 7700X review, we should be more forward-looking and more progressive. I do not know, it's up to you to decide if you want to use D5 or D4 for 13th gen. But that said, compared to the 77X, Ryzen 7000 and X670 in general, there's no support for both Gen 5 PCIe and M.2 on 13th gen motherboards. So far, the only Gen 5 option available is on the PCIe slots. This is kind of weird because Gen 5 SSDs are already around the corner and there's no mention of PCIe 5 graphic cards. I do not know the meaning behind this decision, perhaps you guys can let me know in the comments below. Next, I do not have the price for this CPU yet, but Intel recommends to sell it at USD 409. It is just slightly more than the 77X at launch, but we still have to look at the prices of the Z790 as well as the B760 motherboards. If you don't already own a Z690 or B660 motherboard, you will have to filter in the Gen 6 or Gen 7 motherboard if you want to use 13th gen. And yes, you need more power for this CPU. As I mentioned earlier, do give yourself more power headroom if you want to get this CPU or something more like the 13900K. So if you own an older Ryzen CPU and just want super fast blading speeds, go take a look around and see if you can lay your hands on a 5800X 3D. For productivity and gaming, both the 13700K as well as the 7700X make very compelling considerations. I do not want to play Team Red or Team Blue favorites here, but if you're someone who owns a 12th gen, yes, you can save money by reusing your motherboard. If you own an 11th gen or older, get this CPU and you won't regret it. If you are on the Ryzen platform, you can decide between the 77X as well as the 13700K. Okay, that's a very long review. Hopefully, you can decide between the 77X and the 13700K. But if you are not able to, you can check out my more in-depth review on the 77X below. And with that, thank you for watching and goodbye.